The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. They bring no offer for new customers. Play just $5. $50 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently early Tuesday morning, December 23rd, around 2:40 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the preview of Tokyo. We are hoping to get outrights for Beijing. Unfortunately, didn't happen, so we are going to go solo with Tokyo here. Then we'll break down Beijing in a separate episode, but for this one, only one event to get through, so it should be a short episode nonetheless. No quarter odds either. Now, I was going to record this episode later on in the day. However, the problem is I'm pretty busy on Tuesday, so I had some free time early in the morning. Thought, why not? We'll knock it out. So instead, we're going to do one tournament only for the preview, and we are going to have no quarter odds as well. So it should be pretty short, but still, hopefully you end up making some money, and hopefully we end up making some money finding some outright picks for the event. Now, also worth mentioning, before we get into the actual tournament preview, a reminder they're brought to you by our actual app, which you can download for all of our free picks and podcasts. So if you want to check out SGPN with all of the free picks and content that we have to offer, check out the app on the App Store. And once again, you can find all of our picks and podcasts in one easy location. Plus, a reminder, if you want to actually help support the show, like, subscribe on YouTube. A reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So podcast available in video format or audio format. Video is available on YouTube and the SGPN Twitter account. So we do simulcast there. But if you want audio only, that's fine. Check out Spotify or Apple and leave a rating and a review when you do check out the podcast there. Plus, a reminder, check the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merch for tennis. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable. Check it out. Think you'll like the options we have there on the merch store. So, nothing to actually recap for the last episode because we did an episode for the final matches in Chengdu and Hangzhou. They haven't happened yet, so nothing to recap there for the lock and dog. If you want my thoughts on those matchups, check out the episode for this one. But once again, we're going to be doing a full tournament preview in this one. Now, instead of doing the recap for the lock and dog, thought I would maybe dive into some random, I'd say, news that was going on for tennis. Shouldn't take long, but still worth mentioning some stuff. So, mentioned before in the last episode that you saw Team World beat Team Europe, mainly because Zverev was god-awful in the event, and Fritz went God mode. Now, for the women's side, you saw Italy beat US in the Billie Jean King Cup, so nice job by Paolini to clinch it for Italy. Besides that, Haddad Maia decided to end her season early for health and recovery purposes. Does it matter? Not really. I don't think she's that good anyway, but the point is she ended up ending her season early for just an extra break entering next season. And I'd say the main storyline involved an auction, actually, which was Andy Murray. His racket from the 2013 Wimbledon title match ended up selling for $73,000. So if you have a decent amount of money to spend, you could have spent it on an Andy Murray racket, but either way, did sell for $73K. For the women's side, by the way, I forgot to mention that Swiatek did end up winning the Korea Open. Good for her. Went 3 sets, did drop the first set handily, then bounced back and won 7-6, 7-5. But either way, Swiatek wins again. What else is new? But that's basically it for the actual tennis news. So moving on to Tokyo. For the actual recent winners of the event, so this one is going to be a pretty entertaining tournament based on the names that are mentioned, and you have some questionable, I'd say, spots for guys who, off the Laver Cup, maybe you're going to be fatigued or not. We'll see. For example, you have Alcaraz and you have Fritz and Rune's in there too. Decent amount of guys who are actually in the Laver Cup, so we'll see if fatigue plays a factor. I believe it did last year, so we'll see if that matters, but worth mentioning, a couple of people from the Laver Cup are starting to resume their ATP schedule. We'll see if it impacts them at all for this one. So for the recent winners here, you have Fies, who ended up beating Humbert in a very fun tournament last year. You had Shelton to beat Karatsev the year prior, and Fritz did beat Tiafoe the year before. So you have seen serving play a factor. I wouldn't say that it's an end-all, be-all, but having a good serve helps, and that's why Shelton and Karatsev and Fritz all made it far. Point is, though, Fies did win an epic against Humbert last year, also won an epic against Rune the round prior. So Fies was on a very impressive run, and we'll see if we can see a similar, I don't want to say Cinderella, because it sounds disrespectful, towards Fies and Humbert. But we have seen some unexpected finalists here with Karatsev and with Fies winning the whole thing. maybe we'll see a Cinderella take it in this one, but who knows. So for the actual outright odds here, looking at the options, you have Alcaraz at minus 175. You have Fritz at 5-1. Makic is at 18-1. You have Rune at 22-1. Rude is at 22-1 as well. Tiafoe 25-1. Shapo is 25-1. Munar 28-1. Nakashima 28-1. Mickelson 28-1 as well. Humbert 28-1. Berrettini 35-1. Brooksby 35-1. Diallo 40-1. You have Korda 40-1, and you kind of get the point. So, looking at the actual draw before getting to the actual picks for the outrights. So Alcaraz is also off the Laver Cup. I wouldn't say that his workload was that crazy in it, but we'll see what happens. Now he's against Baez in the first round. No buys here. But I mean, Baez on hard court is basically a buy, but everyone is playing. There is no immediate pass into the second round. Everyone is playing in the event, which is pretty cool. Now, for the path itself, you have Tabilo, who might be the matchup there in the second round, who's off of the final in Chengdu. We haven't seen if he won or not, but the point is fatigue can play a factor. Tabilo, I don't think is going to end up withdrawing because it is 500 prize pool money, but he might be out of gas, and Bergs might beat him in the first round. Maybe an upset on that one. But still, point is a pretty decent path for Alcaraz with a compromised Tabilo, I'd say recovery-wise, for the event in the second round. Tiafoe, Nakashima, and Thompson round out the quarter. So they'll kill each other. You have Alcaraz on the easy side. I think Alcaraz will coast into the quarters and beyond. For the second quarter, you have Shapo, DeZumer, you have Berrettini, Munar, Rude, and you have Mochizuki. So pretty decent path there for Rude. The problem is, of course, you're playing Alcaraz in the quarters. So if you want to go for quarter picks, nothing available right now. I think that's going to be pretty chalky between Rude and maybe Shapo. But Shapo, I know, can be a head case. Altmaier can be tricky, as he made a pretty good run there in the U.S. Open, beating Tsitsipas, etc. So maybe you see Altmaier be a Cinderella. I don't trust Berrettini with his durability and with his lack of, I'd say, reps recently. Saw him lose to a lucky loser in his first match back since Wimbledon. Think he is not exactly in great form physically. I'll pass on him there. But I think Rude should end up making it out of that quarter into what should be a pretty rough matchup there against Alcaraz in the semis. So moving on to the third quarter, you have Humbert taking on Brooksby. You have Nishioka taking on Darderi. Mickelson, you have Rune, and Medjedovic. So Rune, I think, actually could be an upset award. I think Medjedovic is pretty dangerous on hard court. We know Rune has not been very good recently. He's dangerous, but also to himself. So I don't really trust Rune based on current form. You could argue that Medjedovic can pull off the upset. I'll put it this way. I would have seen shocking upsets in the past. This is not one of them. I think that Medjedovic can pull this off. Mickelson doesn't really scare me at all. Humbert has been really bad recently, but I think he's pretty good on hard court, so maybe he can get past Brooksby and make a decent run. And Nishioka has not been good here historically. Still Japanese, if you want to go for the home crowd angle. That could be an option for you. And for the last quarter, the Fritz quarter, you have Fritz against Diallo. Fun matchup there in the first round. You have Borges against Watanuki. You have Korda against Giron, and you have Makic taking on a qualifier. I see chalk there. You'd argue maybe Korda, I don't trust him just mentally. So with that being the case, I think Makic goes up against Fritz in the quarters there. And we'll see who gets by. But I don't see many shocking Cinderellas to actually make a good run here. Then again, we saw last year, fees we didn't exactly expect, and he won the whole thing. So that's kind of the beauty of the event. But either way, should be a couple of, I'd say, Cinderella options, maybe to the round of 16 or the quarters, but I don't see many reaching the semis. Maybe one or two, which I'll mention in a second. Before we get into the actual picks that we have for the outrights for Tokyo, a reminder that we are brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBook.ag. Using to bet on football. They have a prop builder as well, second to none. Use their platform for a bunch of different sports, whether it involves tennis, whether it involves UFC, basketball, baseball playoff stuff. Check it out. But a reminder, you can also use crypto for deposits and payouts when you sign up for an account. Use code SGPN for 100%. Bet back bonus $500 for your customers. MyBook.ag promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, which is America's #1 sports futures market. Since Novig's an exchange, you're getting some great prices. It's available in 30 states. Download the app, and you'll get $50 when you spend just $5. If you use the promo code SGPN, get on the actual Novig, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the bracket for Tokyo. Time to move on into the actual outright picks. Right off the odds before, now we have no quarters. Once again, apologies, so we can't really go through those. But for the outrights. So I am going to go pretty chalky early on. I will avoid the Laver Cup fade and the fatigue. I think Alcaraz and Fritz should look good in the event. Now, Alcaraz might be rusty early, but he has a very easy draw with Baez, then probably Bergs in the second round, maybe Tabilo, but he should be pretty exhausted after going through qualifying, playing in the final in Chengdu, immediately turning around to play in Tokyo. It's a bad spot for Tabilo. I'm not interested. I think Alcaraz should coast, and I think that Thompson, Nakashima, and Tiafoe will kill each other, but Alcaraz beats whoever comes out of that. So give me Alcaraz, my first choice there, minus 160. In the second quarter, his potential matchup there in the semis, probably Ruud or Shapo, doesn't scare me at all. I think Alcaraz's draw is very favorable. I'll take him. I found a minus 160. I'll take that as my first choice. Fritz, though, is at 550. His draw is tougher than Alcaraz because he has Diallo in the first round. Diallo, though, has not been in great form. I know he won a match in the Davis Cup against Israel, but the point is Israel, we know, is not a great tennis country. And the fact is Diallo has not been very good recently for the last couple of months. So I think with that being the case, we're looking at Alcaraz, who should coast. Think Fritz might join him in the semis. Think his path's not bad. Makic can be tricky. Makic might lose to Korda or Giron, maybe. I think you're probably going to end up seeing Fritz taking on Makic there in the quarters. But 550 for a former finalist and a former champion in the event, as he beat Tiafoe a couple years ago, and said before in the Laver Cup, beat Alcaraz and Zverev in straight sets. He was probably either Team World MVP or runner-up to De Minaur, but Fritz beat some good competition. I know the court speeds are faster here than in the Laver Cup, but I like how he's playing. I think his confidence is pretty high, and with him being a former champion here, his game, said before, having a good serve helps, and Fritz does have a great serve compared to the rest of the field. Give me Fritz at 550 for this one. And I am going to go with a long shot because why not? At the end of the day, Alcaraz, we know, maybe struggles after the Laver Cup. Same with Fritz. So I am going to go with a long shot because I think it's a guy who can, if he finds his form again, be dangerous. And that will be Humbert at plus 4,000. Not exactly the greatest matchup in the first round against Brooksby. I think Humbert's better than him when he's in form. He's been really bad for the last couple months. I'm aware of it. However, he made the final last year. We know that he's a solid hardcourt player when he's on. And 40-1's a pretty decent draw for his actual quarter. So Brooksby in the first match. We know Brooksby is not a good server. Humbert can find a way to beat him, I think. Then second round, you have Nishioka, who's been useless for about 3 straight months against Darderi. And we know Darderi's not good on hardcourt either. Then you have what could be Mickelson or Medjedovic or looking at Rune. It's an open third quarter. I think that Humbert can find a way to maybe make it back to a final. And the fact is, we saw that Fritz maybe could lose to Makic in the quarterfinals. I'll avoid Alcaraz as long as possible, but I think that Humbert plus 4,000 is a good price. Most books had around 28-1. I found a rogue 4,000 shopping around. I think it's worth something, so I'll take Humbert at plus 4,000, my long shot, just for the upside. Will he win the event? Probably not. But I think that plus 4,000 for the defending finalist and runner-up has some value. I'll go with him as my last choice. So once again, a pretty, I'd say, short breakdown for Tokyo. We have no quarters, apologies, but just looking at the actual names here that I'm skipping. Rune I can't trust. I know he made a decent run last year, lost to Fees in a 3-set marathon. Ruud, who has really not been playing much tennis recently with injuries, and I'm not sold. Tiafoe, former finalist, was awful in the Davis Cup. He skipped to the Laver Cup, not really interested based on his current form, and he's in the same section and quarter as Alcaraz. That is an easy pass for me. Shapo, same half as Alcaraz, not playing great tennis, and he's a head case, not going to bother. So you can mention maybe if you wanted a guy with uncertainty, but maybe upside. Maybe Berrettini, but I need to see more sample. He barely played, lost to a lucky loser as a massive favorite in his first match back. Maybe if the serve and forehand are on, I think his game translates well to the courts here in Tokyo. But Munar, then Ruud, and then potentially Shapo, then Alcaraz. Not really sold on the path for Berrettini. Thought about it. If he was playing a couple more events before this, I might have considered it. But Berrettini playing one match since Wimbledon is just not good enough for me. Pass on him. Nakashima I can't trust because he can't return. I mentioned Humbert. DraftKings is 28-1. I found a 40. So once again, shop around, find the best price. But I don't really see many long shot options that can actually pull this off. Korda skill set wise, maybe, but I don't trust his mental toughness. So I think that it's going to be a struggle for him to actually make a very deep run. And that's kind of it. I went through everybody and nobody else jumped off the page. But once again, for my picks here for the event in Tokyo, my outrights are going to be on Alcaraz, minus 160. I will go with Fritz at 550. And I will go with a rogue number on Humbert at plus 4,000. So going to wrap it up for Tokyo. Time to move on into the Lock and Dog picks for the show. Before we get into the Lock and Dog, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Owner Fantasy. Using to play your pick'em entries, you win 500 times your money, pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats. Available in a bunch of different sports. They have baseball, they have basketball, they have football, and tennis. So check out tennis there. Evening sports are available on the pick'em entries. But when you do sign up for your new account, use the new offer for new customers. Play just $5, $50 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We also are brought to you by Rhythm. They were off to a great start in college football in the NFL. They also have a leaderboard with weekly cash prizes. Just tracking your bets in the app. Track 5 bets of the same type for any model that you build, and you can win 1K. The bets do not have to win. Just track your plays, and you'll be entered into the random giveaway. Plus, use the promo code SGPN25 when you download the Rhythm app for a quarter off your first month. Download Rhythm, the code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the outrights for Tokyo. Time to move on into the Lock and Dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go back to the Fritz match against Diallo, and I'm going to go with Fritz in straight sets at minus 135. Yes, into the Laver Cup maybe is a spot where Fritz can have a mental lapse after beating Alcaraz and Zverev in straight sets. But the fact is, he beat Alcaraz and Zverev in straight sets. Fritz, we know, is a top 10 player in the world, good on hard court, and the fact is he's won a title here before. He's comfortable in Tokyo, and he's in great form mentally after beating 2 of the top 4 players in the world. I think it's a good spot for Fritz to keep it rolling, and I do think that his serve should look sharp. Diallo, though, has not been great. I mentioned before, he won 1 match in the Davis Cup against Israel, who is not a good tennis country at all. But he's lost 3 of his last 4 ATP matches, and I think that it's pretty concerning when all 3 losses were in straight sets. Diallo, we know, can be dangerous with the serve. Second serve, though, not that great, and I do think rally-wise, he's a lot worse than Fritz. It's a bad matchup. Faced off on hard court in August. I believe that was in Toronto. So that was in Diallo's home country of Canada, and Fritz buried him. So I do think that Fritz is a bad matchup for Diallo. Yes, they had a marathon in Wimbledon earlier this year, but they faced off in Toronto, and Fritz not only won, but he only lost 6 games. Diallo got absolutely buried. So the fact is Fritz proved that he's a better player than Diallo. I think he'll look good on hard court again in an environment that he's used to because he's won a title here before. Give me Fritz in straight sets at minus 135 as my lock for the show. For the dog, I said before, this guy has not won a match for about 2 or 3 months, but I think the price is very generous with the actual environment in Japan and with his recent form. I'd say being misleading after watching him lose to Struff in the Davis Cup. I am going to go with Nishioka, money line at plus 150. However, take this on a book that does void retirements if you can find it, because Nishioka, we know, is very prone to retiring mid-match. However, Darderi is a minus 175 favorite, despite being 4-12 straight up in his last 16 hardcourt matches. We know that he's a clay specialist. We know that he is not good on hardcourt at all. Maybe gotten a little bit better in that area, but the fact is 4-12 straight up, and he is minus 175 against an underdog who's in his home country. So I do think that the crowd will be against him. I think his form is okay at best, but not a great overall hardcourt player, and not great against lefties. Darderi is 3-5 straight up in his last 8 matches against lefties. And of course, Nishioka is a lefty. Nishioka, though, being Japanese, should have a lot of crowd support for this one. And said before, did lose a hard-fought battle against Struff in the Davis Cup. Very close. Struff was able to fight off every breakpoint. 10 breakpoint chances missed by Nishioka. Nishioka, by comparison, only faced 3. Thought he played well. So after retiring against Zhu in the previous ATP match, I thought he looked good. Yes, he fell short against Struff, but Struff, we know, is a pretty dangerous hardcourt player when he's on. Made a good run in the U.S. Open, and Nishioka took him to the brink, went to a deciding set. Think that he might have found something in that match. We know Nishioka is a solid hardcourt player, and that's where most of his success comes from. I'd describe him as a hardcourt specialist. End of the day, yes, he's lost a ton of matches in a row. Think he's lost like 12 in a row. It's pretty ugly, but I think plus 150 for this environment against Darderi, a clay specialist, is a good price. I'll take that as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog picks. The lock's going to be on Fritz straight sets against Diallo at minus 135. For the dog, I'll take Nishioka to snap the losing streak. Give me Nishioka on the money line at plus 150 against Darderi. It's going to wrap it up, though, back once again for Beijing, because we broke up the outrights into 2 episodes. So stay tuned for the Beijing preview episode. Until next time, I'm on Twitter as Radio. Good luck to all of you and all of your